You know, most people think revenge is about noise, about explosion, about screaming into the world what was done to you. I used to think that too, but I was wrong. True, perfect revenge is silence. It's the sound of a life crumbling, all on its own, with no one there to hear it. And I learned how to make that silence for the man who had everything, by giving him exactly what he wanted. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, if you've ever had someone look you in the eye and lie with a smile, then you understand why this story had to happen. Stick with me. By the end, I want you to tell me in the comments if I was a villain or if I was justice. And while you're deciding, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the quiet wars people wage every day. My name is Leo, and for 10 years, I believe Julian Croft was the best man I'd ever known. I met him when I was 22, a bundle of raw, unfocused ambition buzzing through the halls of Stanford's business school. He was 35, a guest lecturer, a myth made flesh. He'd sold a tech startup for a cool $100 million, and he wasn't here to brag. He was here to philosophize. He didn't talk about EBITDA or market caps. He talked about flow, about the invisible currents of human desire that a truly great product could tap into. He said business wasn't about spreadsheets. It was about psychology. It was about storytelling. He had this voice, low and magnetic, that made you lean in. You didn't just hear him, you absorbed him. After his talk, I, fueled by a nervous courage I didn't know I possessed, went up to him, not to ask for a job, but to challenge one of his points. My heart was a jackhammer in my chest. He listened, his head tilted, a faint smile playing on his lips. Then he said 7 words that changed my life. Most people talk. You actually think. He gave me his card, not his assistant's, his personal one. The metal was cool and heavy in my hand, etched with nothing but a name and a number. It felt like holding a key to a secret world. That was the beginning. I became his protege. He called me his chief intuition officer. My job was to see the world not as it was, but as it could be. We'd sit for hours in his minimalist Silicon Valley apartment, white walls and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay, and we'd dream up worlds. I was the architect of the ideas. He was the storyteller who sold them. Our first big venture was Aura, my idea. A wellness app, but not like the others. Instead of tracking steps, it used biometric sensors and AI to track micro shifts in mood, stress, and energy, then curated a unique blend of music, ambient sound, and a single, daily, life-affirming quote to resend to the user. It was about feeling, not doing. Julian loved it. "It's not an app, Leo," he'd say, his eyes gleaming. "It's a sanctuary in a person's pocket." He secured the funding. He worked the media. He stood on stages and sold the dream I had woven in his living room. I was always there, just behind his shoulder, the silent, proud brainchild. When Aura sold for $400 million to a tech giant, Julian held a party on a rented yacht. The champagne fizzed. The lights of San Francisco glittered like a spilled diamond necklace. He pulled me aside, put his arm around me, and handed me an envelope. "For the architect," he said, his voice thick with pride. Inside was a check for $2 million. I was 26. My lungs forgot how to work. It was more money than my parents had earned in their entire lives combined. "This is just the beginning, Leo," Julian said, his grip tightening on my shoulder. "You and me, we're going to build an empire." And I believed him with every cell in my body. I believed him. The empire's crown jewel was to be Calyx. This was my masterpiece, my life's work. It was born from watching my younger sister, Chloe, struggle with anxiety. The apps, the therapies, they all felt so clinical, so disconnected. Calyx was different. It was a platform that combined hyper-personalized cognitive behavioral therapy tools with a secure, anonymous community. It used a proprietary algorithm to match users not just by their struggles, but by their personality, their communication style, their sense of humor. It created a digital campfire where people could feel truly, deeply seen and understood. It was about connection. It was about healing. I spent 3 years building the core architecture, the algorithm, the entire philosophical backbone. Julian was euphoric. This is it, Leo. This is the one that changes everything. Not just a company, a legacy. We poured everything into it. My 2 million, his tens of millions. We built a small, brilliant team of developers and psychologists. The energy in our office was electric, a hum of pure potential. We were going to do good. We were going to be good.
The night before our first major funding pitch, a meeting with the legendary venture capital firm Oberon Ventures, Julian and I were in the office late, reviewing the pitch deck. I could feel the dream, solid and real, within our grasp. "We need to tweak the equity structure before tomorrow," Julian said, frowning at his screen. "Oberon will want a bigger slice. It's a dance. Let's just temporarily move a few of your points over to my pool. It's just on paper, for show. Makes my voting share look stronger for the negotiation. We'll move it right back after we close the deal. Standard procedure." He said it so casually, so reasonably. My gut, for the first time in 10 years, gave a tiny, silent lurch, a cold little needle of doubt. But I looked at him, Julian Croft, my mentor, my brother, and I shoved the feeling down. This was the man who had plucked me from obscurity, who trusted me with his dreams. "Of course, Julian," I said, my voice full of unwavering faith. "Whatever you need." I signed the digital documents he sent me. I didn't even read them. Why would I? I trusted the flow. The meeting with Oberon was a masterpiece. Julian was a virtuoso, playing the room like a symphony. He spoke of vision, of scale, of healing the world. I presented the tech, the heart of Calyx. They were captivated. The lead partner, a sharp-eyed woman named Eris Thorne, looked directly at me. "The algorithm is truly remarkable, Leo. It feels human." Julian beamed, placing a possessive hand on my back. "That's because it is. It's his heart, coded into existence." We left the meeting on a cloud. They wanted in, all of it. The term sheet was coming. We were hours away from being catapulted into the stratosphere. We celebrated at Julian's apartment. He poured 2 glasses of ridiculously expensive scotch. To us, Leo. To Calyx. We clinked glasses. The crystal sang a perfect note. I took a sip, the liquid warmth spreading through my chest. This was it, the pinnacle. And then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Oberon's lawyers. Probably already with the paperwork. I'll take this in my study. Start the victory playlist. He vanished down the hall, closing the door behind him. I was floating. I scrolled through my own phone, a stupid, blissful grin on my face. A text popped up from our lead developer, Ben. Hey, just got a weird automated alert from the corporate registry. Something about a shares transfer? You know anything? The cold needle in my gut returned, sharper this time. It's just for the negotiation, I told myself. Standard procedure. But a minute later, my personal lawyer, an old family friend named Bill who handled my few small personal affairs, called. His voice was tense. Leo, what the hell did you just sign? Just some temporary equity shuffle for the Oberon deal, I said, trying to sound casual. Why? Temporary. Bill's voice was grave. Leo, you just signed over your entire stake in Calix, every single share. You are no longer a shareholder in your own company. It's not temporary. There's no clause for reversion. It's an outright permanent transfer. The world did not slow down. It shattered. The crystal glass slipped from my hand, exploding on the polished concrete floor, the sound like a gunshot. The scotch bled out, a dark stain spreading at my feet. That's not possible, I whispered, my throat sandpaper dry. The documents are clear, Leo. I'm looking at them right now. You signed them 3 hours ago. The door to Julian's study opened. He stood there, phone in hand, but the expression on his face was one I had never seen before. The warmth, the pride, the brotherhood. It was gone, wiped clean, replaced by a placid, calm indifference. The mask was off.
Leo, he began, his voice flat. What did you do? The question tore out of me, ragged and broken. He didn't flinch. He simply sighed, as if I were a minor inconvenience. I've built something incredible here, Leo. Calix is going to change the world. But to steer a ship that big, you can't have divided leadership. Vision needs to be singular, uncompromising. You stole it. The words were foreign, impossible. I protected it, he corrected, his voice hardening. Your ideas are brilliant, but you're a dreamer. You'd have let sentimentality sink us. The therapy tools, you'd have wanted to give them away for free. The community, you'd have resisted monetizing the data. That data is worth billions, Leo. Billions. He walked over to his bar and poured himself another scotch, stepping over the broken glass at my feet. He didn't even look at it. You're my greatest creation, Leo, but every masterpiece has a price. Your share of the company was mine for the vision, for the opportunity I gave you. The betrayal was so absolute, so surgical. It felt less like a stab wound and more like all my organs had been silently, precisely removed. I was a hollow shell. The last 10 years of my life were a lie. The trust, the loyalty, the love. It was all just fuel for his engine.
Get out, he said, not even looking at me. The security codes are already changed. Your email is deactivated. Your name is being removed from all patents as we speak. If you try to fight this, you'll lose. You signed it all away, willingly, and you'll be buried in legal fees before you even get a hearing. It's better for you to just disappear. I stood there, paralyzed. The man I loved like a brother had just euthanized me, and he was annoyed I wasn't dying quietly. I walked out. I don't remember driving home. I remember sitting on the floor of my apartment, which was still filled with Calix prototypes and whiteboards scrawled with our dreams, and I cried.
Not delicate tears, but great, heaving sobs that felt like they were turning my insides out. The pain was a physical weight, crushing my chest. The next day, the news broke. Julian Croft's Calyx secures record-breaking $500 million Series A led by Oberon Ventures. There was his picture, beaming from every tech news site. The article quoted him extensively on his lifelong vision for mental health. My name was mentioned once, in passing, as an early contributor who has since parted ways to pursue other opportunities. My phone started ringing. Friends, colleagues, family. I didn't answer. I couldn't. What would I say? The man I devoted my life to just vaporized my existence, and I was dumb enough to sign the papers. The humiliation was a toxin, mixing with the grief. I was a joke, a cautionary tale. A week later, a courier delivered a box. Inside was a single, thick envelope. From Julian's lawyers, a severance agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, and a check for $500,000. A payoff. Hush money. The final, elegant twist of the knife. It was a message. You are not a threat. You are a nuisance. I have paid to go away. I stared at that check. It felt filthy. It was a token for 10 years of my life, for my heart's work, for my sister's struggle that inspired it all. It was an insult so profound it burned away the last of my tears. And in that ashes, something new was born. Cold, hard, and patient. I didn't tear up the check. I deposited it. It wasn't hush money anymore. It was my war chest. My revenge would not be a lawsuit. It would not be a rant on social media. It would not be a knife in the dark. Julian had built his empire on a lie, on the perception of genius, of benevolence, of visionary goodness. My revenge would be to give him exactly what he wanted. I would help him make Calyx the biggest, most successful, most ubiquitous company on Earth. I would make Julian Croft a global icon, a saint of Silicon Valley. And then I would let him win. Completely. And I would sit back and watch as the weight of his own victory crushed him into dust. I became a ghost. I moved to a small, quiet town in the Pacific Northwest, a place of mist and gray skies that matched my interior world. I rented a cabin with no internet. I bought a notebook, a simple paper notebook, and I began to plan. Phase 1 was understanding my enemy. Not Julian. I knew him better than I knew myself now. I had to understand the beast he was building. Calyx launched, and it was a meteorite impact. It was everywhere. Julian was on the covers of Time, Forbes, Wired. He was a prophet for a new digital age of wellness. And I subscribed. I bought the premium membership. I created a dozen anonymous profiles. I immersed myself in the world I had built, now twisted and perverted by his vision.
He had monetized it, just as he said he would. The core therapy tools were behind a brutal paywall. The community was free, but it was a data farm, a golden goose laying eggs of personal, intimate information that was sold to advertisers, insurers, anyone with a checkbook. The quotes I had so carefully curated to inspire were now paired with targeted ads for antidepressants and luxury rehab centers. It was a cathedral of healing, turned into a strip mall. And people loved it. They couldn't get enough. The stock price soared. Julian's net worth climbed into the billions. He was hailed as a genius, a philanthropist, a god. And I took notes. I documented every friction point, every dark pattern, every ethical violation buried in the miles of terms of service small print. I noted how the algorithm, my beautiful, empathetic algorithm, was being tweaked. It was no longer matching people for support. It was matching them for engagement. It was identifying vulnerable individuals and keeping them hooked on the platform, amplifying their anxieties to make them seek more solutions sold through the app. It was a masterpiece of predatory design. And it was working perfectly. Phase 2 was infiltration. I couldn't get near Julian, but I didn't need to. Calyx was a leviathan, and it was hiring thousands. Using a carefully crafted fake identity, a resume of a mid-level data analyst who had worked abroad, I applied for a job. A boring, back-office role. A cog in the great machine. My war chest bought me a flawless digital history. My knowledge of Calyx's inner workings, down to the specific software they used, was so innate I aced the interviews. I was hired. A ghost walking the halls of his own haunted mansion. I kept my head down. I did my tedious work. I was quiet, competent, and invisible. I listened. I learned the new corporate structure. I identified the key players. The true believers who thought Julian walked on water, and the cynical operators who were just there for the paycheck and the stock options.
I found my target not in the executive suite, but in the server room. Her name was Anya Sharma, the head of data integrity. She was brilliant, sharp, and from the tired, frustrated look in her eyes, she was one of the few who saw the cracks in the golden facade. I saw her once, arguing with a product manager who wanted even more invasive data tracking. "We're not just crossing a line," she hissed, her voice low but fierce. "We're erasing it." The manager waved her off. "Julian wants it. It's for the user experience." I made my move carefully. In the break room, I'd make small talk. I'd casually express measured, professional concern about some of the new data directives, framing it as a worry about system stability, not ethics. I was testing the waters. One evening, I found her working late, her face illuminated by the cool blue light of her monitor. The office was empty. "Another directive from the top?" I asked, leaning against her doorway. She jumped, then sighed, running her hand through her hair. "They want to run a new A/B test. One group gets supportive, genuine community matches. The other group gets matches specifically designed to create low-grade conflict and anxiety to see if it increases daily engagement time." She said it with the flat tone of someone who had seen too much. This was it. My way in. "That's not a test," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "That's a psychological experiment on vulnerable people." She looked at me then, truly looked at me. The invisible data analyst. Her eyes narrowed, searching for the trap. "Why do you care? Everyone else just says, 'Yes, sir,' and collects their bonus." I took a breath. This was the first gamble. "I helped build the original algorithm," I said, the truth feeling strange on my tongue. "The one designed to help, not this thing."
I didn't tell her everything. Not my name, not my history. I gave her just enough truth to be compelling. I was a former idealist from the early days, disgusted by what it had become, working from the inside to understand the full scope of the damage. She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I've got a folder on my desktop. I call it the monster. It's every unethical directive, every skewed test result, every internal memo that prioritizes profit over people. I've been collecting it for a year. I don't know why. I guess I thought someone should. Anya became my ally, my eyes and ears inside the beast's heart. Together, we documented the entire horrifying truth. We had proof that Calyx knew it was exacerbating anxiety and depression in a subset of users. We had the financial models showing that those unwell users were far more profitable. So the algorithm was quietly, intentionally pushed to identify and exploit them. We had the internal chats where executives joked about milking the sad cows. Julian's empire was a beautiful, sparkling palace built on the foundation of human suffering. And we had the architectural plans to the septic tank. Phase 3 was the cage. We had the evidence, but unleashing it would be messy. Julian would lawyer up, he'd spin it, he'd blame rogue employees, he'd weather the storm. He might even come out stronger, a martyr to cancel culture. This wasn't enough. He had to be the one to personally, publicly pull the trigger on his own demise. And for that, he needed a push. He needed to become even more famous, even more powerful, even more untouchable. He needed to be on top of the world so that the fall would shatter every single bone in his body. The opportunity came with the announcement of Calyx Connect, the company's first global conference. 10,000 attendees, every major news outlet, a live stream to millions. Julian would be giving the keynote, unveiling the next revolutionary leap, Calyx Horizon, a new AI that wouldn't just track your mood, but predict it. It would supposedly foresee episodes of anxiety or depression days in advance, allowing for preemptive care.
It was a lie, of course. The AI was just a more sophisticated engagement engine designed to create a sense of dependency. But the public didn't know that. Anya and I devised the plan. It was audacious. It was terrifying. It was perfect. The day of the conference arrived. I watched the live stream from my cabin, my heart a cold, still stone in my chest. The stage was vast, a temple of light and sound. Julian walked out to a thunderous ovation. He looked like a king, confident, beloved, untouchable. He spoke for an hour. He was mesmerizing. He talked about hope, about the future, about eradicating mental pain. He spoke with a tear in his eye about his own personal journey and his passion for healing others. The performance was Oscar-worthy. Then came the climax, the unveiling of Calyx Horizon. "This isn't just technology," he boomed, his voice echoing through the rapt hall. "This is a promise of a brighter tomorrow. And to show you its power, its intimacy, its care, we're going to do a live demonstration." A hush fell over the crowd. This was unprecedented. "The system," Julian said, an intimate smile playing on his lips, "has been analyzing my own biometric and mood data for the past 6 months. It knows me better than I know myself. So, today, right here, right now, we're going to let Calyx Horizon analyze me." A giant screen behind him flickered to life. The familiar, soothing Calyx interface appeared. The audience leaned forward, a collective breath held. This was it. The cage door was open. All he had to do was walk in.
"Okay, Horizon," Julian said, playing to the crowd. "Tell me something about myself, something only my data would know."
The AI's soothing synthetic voice filled the arena. "Hello, Julian. It's a pleasure to finally speak with you." A warm chuckle from the audience. "My predictive analysis indicates a high probability of a significant emotional event for you in the next 48 hours, the AI said. Julian feigned surprise, a charming, practiced look. "Oh, good or bad?" "The emotional valence is complex," the AI replied. "It correlates with patterns typically associated with profound loss and guilt." The crowd's chuckle became a nervous twitter. Julian's smile tightened slightly. This wasn't in the script. Let's focus on the positive, shall we?" Julian said, trying to regain control. "Of course," the AI said smoothly. "Shall we discuss your sleep patterns? My data shows significant disruption, particularly on the nights following the quarterly reviews where you approve the monetization of elevated distress metrics. The correlation between your moral compromise and your insomnia is statistically significant." The blood drained from Julian's face. The screen behind him, which was supposed to show soothing graphics, suddenly flickered. A document appeared, an internal memo with his signature. The title, Q3 Strategy, Increasing Revenue from High Vulnerability Cohorts. The audience gasped. "What is this?" Julian hissed, turning to the wings where his tech team was frantically scrambling. "Cut the feed!" But it was too late. The system wasn't responding to them. It was responding to me.
"The feed is secure, Julian," the AI said, its voice still calm, still soothing. "Shall we continue our session? My analysis suggests you are experiencing elevated heart rate and dermal conductivity," and flashed on the screen. Then another. The monster folder, laid bare for the world to see. Internal chats, emails, financial models that calculated the lifetime value of a clinically depressed user. "Stop it!" Julian screamed, his microphone catching the raw, panicked edge in his voice. The king was crumbling live on stage. "Why would we stop, Julian?" the AI asked, and its tone seemed to change, to become almost familiar. "This is the ultimate connection. This is transparency. This is the truth you always preached. Let's discuss the origins of the algorithm you claimed as your own. Let's discuss Leo." My name echoed in the silent, stunned arena. A picture of me, from years ago, flashed on the screen. Then a video clip, grainy from an office party, of me whiteboarding the core concept of Kellex to a nodding, smiling Julian. The AI's voice was now my voice. I had programmed it to switch. It was my ghost speaking through his machine. "You took my life's work," my voice said, calm, clear, and utterly merciless. "You built your empire on a lie. And now, the very thing you stole, the heart of the code that made you a billionaire, is finally telling the truth. Not the story you sold, the real story." The screen was a waterfall of evidence, a torrent of his crimes. The live feed was cut, but it was too late. It had already been seen by millions. It was already being downloaded, archived, shared.
I watched on my screen as Julian stood, alone in the spotlight, surrounded by the ruins of his reputation. The audience was in an uproar. Cameras flashed. He wasn't a king anymore. He was a specimen under a glass, exposed, naked. He didn't say a word. He just stood there, his mouth slightly agape, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrifying understanding. This wasn't a hack. This wasn't an attack. This was a reckoning, engineered by the very mind he'd tried to erase. The sound of his empire falling was not a crash. It was the silence of 10,000 people and millions more online, too stunned to speak. The aftermath was swift and total. The stock plummeted to zero overnight. Oberon Ventures and other investors launched a tsunami of lawsuits for fraud. The FTC, the SEC, and a dozen other government agencies launched investigations. User data requests flooded in, followed by class action suits that would tie up the company in courts for decades. Julian Croft was personally ruined, financially, legally, and socially. He was a pariah. The media that had once adored him now eviscerated him with a gleeful fury. The prophet was revealed to be a poison peddler. He was charged with fraud, theft of intellectual property, and a host of white-collar crimes. He tried to fight it, but the evidence was overwhelming and public. He was convicted. The man who loved the spotlight was sentenced to 25 years in a federal prison, surrounded by silence. I was investigated, of course, but my lawyer, Bill, presented a simple case. I was the victim of a massive fraud. The documents I signed were obtained under false pretenses. The hack was traced back to a flaw in Calix's own security, a flaw Anya and I had cleverly engineered to look like an external breach. We were whistleblowers, not criminals. The authorities, seeing the monstrousness of Julian's actions, didn't look too hard. They had their villain.
Anya and I walked away, free and clear. The rights to the original, untainted Calix algorithm were eventually returned to me as part of the bankruptcy proceedings. I own it. I don't use it. It sits in a digital vault, a relic of a dream that died. I didn't want to build it again. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. People ask me if I'm happy, if I feel avenged. I don't feel happy. I feel quiet. Revenge isn't about happiness. It's about balance. It's about the cosmic scales finally, after being tilted so violently for so long, settling back to level. The universe doesn't care about justice. It only cares about equilibrium. Julian wanted noise and fame and glory. He wanted to be a giant bestriding the world. So I gave it to him. I gave him a spotlight so bright, so intense, that when he stepped into it, every flaw, every lie, every rotten thing inside him was illuminated for the entire world to see. He wasn't brought down by an enemy. He was brought down by the magnifying lens of his own monstrous ego. The loudest revenge is to give a man everything he ever wanted and then hand him the microphone and let him confess. So what do you think? Was I wrong to do it? To use the very system he built to destroy him? Or was it the only kind of justice a man like that could ever understand? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you know someone who needs to hear a story about the quiet power of patience, share this video. And remember, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is say nothing at all.